Chapter 4. Movements in the Shadows. 2 days after Inísel's wedding to the Shantric, the moment she most feared arrived. She prepared to leave the comfort of her home and move to the temple where the Shantric and his advisors resided. With a heavy heart and a knot in her stomach, she bid farewell to her mother and her adoptive father, Reynard Zendel and Ayara Zendel. Isra, her loyal maid, stayed close to her, providing support and comfort with her mere presence. A retinue of slaves, assigned to serve as Inísel's new maids, accompanied her on the journey. The path to her new home was long and tense, with Inísel trying to maintain a serene appearance while her mind battled between fear and resignation. She knew her life was going to change drastically and definitively. Upon arriving at the temple, Inísel was taken to her room, a spacious and luxurious area decorated with rich fabrics and exotic wooden furniture. The beauty of the place, however, did not console her. She knew she was trapped in a golden cage, forced to meet the expectations of her new position. At night, Inísel's fear became palpable when she was taken to the Shantric's quarters. Several slaves had spent the entire afternoon preparing her body with exotic oils and perfumes that made her skin more radiant to seduce her husband. The long corridor seemed endless, and each step echoed, increasing her anxiety. Upon reaching the door of the Shantric's chamber, she felt a shiver down her spine. The doors opened slowly, and she was greeted by the waiting Shantric. The Shantric Theodric Electita Anu wore a white robe richly adorned with golden beads and astolite jewels. His presence emanated a mix of power and authority, and his eyes scanned Inísel's figure with an intensity that made her shudder. Despite his age, the sovereign maintained an imposing demeanor and a notably muscular physique, evident as he began to unbutton his robe, revealing his bare torso. Inísel, feeling vulnerable and exposed, tried to maintain her composure. She recalled the words of her closest friend and maid, urging her to be strong and find her own path within this new life. But at that moment, with the Shantric watching her with a mix of desire and possessiveness, those words seemed empty and distant. The Shantric approached her. His smile was a blend of satisfaction and dominance.
Inísel, my Valkyr,
he said, his voice soft but firm.
This night will be ours, and we will begin a new era for Ariel and for us. Today we will unite in body and spirit.
Inísel nodded, not trusting her voice to respond. The Shantric raised a hand and caressed her cheek, a gesture meant to be comforting but only increasing her discomfort.
You are beautiful,
he continued.
And I am sure you will be a Valkyr worthy of this kingdom.
She felt his words were empty, premeditated compliments that failed to reassure her. As he spoke, her mind wandered, seeking a mental escape from the immediate reality. She remembered her home, her life before this commitment, and the sense of freedom that now seemed so distant. The Shantric guided her to the bed, an imposing piece of furniture covered in silks and cushions. Inísel closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath to calm her racing heart. When she opened them, she found the Shantric looking at her with a mix of desire and approval. Theodric had completely removed his robe, revealing his tanned, smooth skin. Inísel looked at the Shantric's body, observing with a mix of satisfaction and resignation that Theodric, despite his age, did not have a bad physique. His well-defined muscles and skin tanned by the Ariel sun gave him an imposing air, an appearance that matched his position of power. As the Shantric moved closer to her, Inísel felt a mix of fear and acceptance. She knew what was going to happen, and although her mind fought against the idea, her body prepared for the inevitable. Gently, Theodric took Inísel's hands, his fingers firm but not rough. He led her onto the bed with a confidence that made it clear he was used to being obeyed. He sat her down and began skillfully untying the white robe that covered her young, pure body.
I will be honest with you. Tonight we will make love, Inísel,
said Theodric, his low, deep voice resonating in the room.
I am glad that a woman as beautiful as you is now my wife.
Inísel swallowed, a knot forming in her throat as she tried to maintain her composure. There was no turning back. With a mix of emotions ranging from resistance to submission, she allowed the Shantric to begin undressing her, feeling the cool night air touch her exposed skin. Without waiting for permission, the Shantric kissed her with a possessiveness that she found unsettling. Inísel barely returned the kiss, while her husband's hands skillfully lowered the robe that covered her body, eager to explore every inch with a devotion that Inísel found invasive. Then, Marveling at Inísel's nakedness, Theodric kissed her neck softly, slowly descending and tracing his lips over her entire body. The pressure he exerted on her felt suffocating. Meanwhile, the Shantric enjoyed every inch of her skin. He could not help but let out small moans of pleasure, while Inísel remained resigned, knowing she had no escape. Finally, when it was all over, Theodric withdrew, his breathing heavy and his body covered in sweat. He looked at Inísel with an expression of satisfaction and something she couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps it was the satisfaction of power, of having claimed what he considered his.
Rest, my Valkyr,
he said, caressing her cheek before settling onto the bed. Inísel nodded slightly, her eyes fixed on the ceiling as she tried to process what had just happened. The Shantric soon fell asleep beside her, and fatigue forced Inísel to succumb to sleep. The next morning, Inísel woke up in the Shantric's spacious and luxurious bed. The sun's first rays filtered through the silk curtains, bathing the room in a soft, golden light. As she opened her eyes, she found Theodric's face, still asleep next to her. The events of the previous night surfaced in her mind with unsettling clarity. Their intimate encounter had not been as terrible as she had feared, but the disgust persisted, deeply rooted in the obligation to lie with an older man she did not love. The Shantric woke up shortly after, turning to her with a soft smile.
Good morning, my Valkyr,
he said with a voice hoarse from sleep. Inísel responded politely, returning the greeting without quite knowing what else to say.
Good morning, your Shantric.
A part of her still felt disoriented and foreign to this new world she found herself in. Theodric rose from the bed, his muscular and tanned body moving with the confidence of a man used to being obeyed. He walked to the wardrobe, selecting his attire for the day, a robe decorated with golden embroidery and precious stones that reflected his status and power.
Today I will meet with my advisors in the morning,
announced the Shantric as he dressed.
We are about to implement a new law. We will require every young male citizen, non-slave, of Sabla Urbo to begin military training. We are preparing for a future conquest of the 3 continents.
Inísel felt a knot form in her stomach. She quickly rose from the bed, her indignation evident on her face.
Pardon me, your Shantric, but you cannot force our people to fight and suffer in a war that will not benefit Ariel.
She protested vehemently.
You cannot condemn our people to suffer like this.
Theodric looked at her, his expression hardening slightly.
The North has stopped exporting Estelite to Ariel,
he explained, his tone reflecting both frustration and determination.
I am tired of Ariel being treated like garbage by the 3 continents. This is our chance to claim the respect and power we deserve.
Inísel stared at him intently.
It's a battle we cannot win. We do not have enough resources to support the soldiers. Many will perish in an unnecessary war.
The Shantric sighed, approaching her.
Inísel, I understand your concerns, but this is the only way to ensure our future. The 3 continents have looked down on us for too long. It is time for Ariel to rise and make itself respected.
Inísel felt a deep conflict within her. On one hand, she understood the need to protect and strengthen her people to some extent, but she knew that a war would bring nothing but suffering. As she pondered, the Shantric watched her intensely, not yet finished informing his wife.
Additionally, today we will also discuss closing the IES Ludi,
said Theodric. Inísel immediately looked at her husband, her eyes shining with indignation and concern.
But the games are a beloved tradition of our people. Closing them will only lead to discontent.
She protested.
We are closing them out of necessity,
responded Theodric firmly.
We need our young people to focus on military training. The games can wait. Glory for Ariel, not.
Inísel shook her head emphatically, unconvinced.
Please, reconsider, your Shantric,
she said in a softer voice, trying to appeal to his human side.
There are other ways to gain respect and power without resorting to violence. War will only bring more hatred and destruction. Condemning our people to fight for your vanity, your Shantric, please don't do it. Besides, we will not be enough to conquer the cardinals.
Inísel, it will not be just us. I know we wouldn't have enough citizens in Sabla Urbo to fill a proper army. That is why, with your father's help, we have hired mercenaries from all over the desert and parts of the 3 continents. Moreover, Thanks to your father's influence, other cities in Erail are beginning to see the advantages of facing the cardinals together.
Inísel's indignation grew even more.
They are despicable men, raiders, thieves, rapists. We cannot trust them to keep Sabla Urbo safe. On the contrary, we could be inviting chaos and destruction into our own city.
The Shandrik pressed his lips together, his patience clearly at its limit.
My decision is law.
He replied sternly.
Your role as my Valkyr, Inísel, is to give me pleasure and, in due time, children. As for politics, your role is to see, hear, and remain silent.
The Shandruk's words felt like a physical blow to Inísel. She clenched her teeth, trying to contain the tide of frustration and despair that overwhelmed her. However, before she could respond, Theodric turned and left the room, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Inísel rose from the bed and walked to the window, her gaze lost in the sandy streets of Sabla Urbo. The bustle of everyday life continued below, unaware of the political storms brewing in the high halls of power. She saw merchants opening their stalls, children playing, and men and women going about their daily chores. This was her home, her people, and the thought that they might soon be dragged into a senseless war filled her with anguish.
I must do anything to protect them,
she whispered, her emerald eyes shining with unwavering determination.
My people, I will not allow your Shandrik to send you to certain death. No matter the cost, months, years, but I swear that my voice will be heard and the situation will change.
She knew that the Shandruk's decision to invade the other continents would only bring more problems to her people. The mercenaries, with their own loyalties and greed, would not be a reliable force. Additionally, a prolonged war could devastate the lands of Erail and plunge Sabla Urbo into chaos from which they might never recover. As she contemplated the city life from her window, Inísel felt a deep sense of responsibility. Although the Shandrik had ordered her to be silent, she could not simply stand by and passively accept such a grim fate for her people. She knew she had to find a way to influence Theodric's decisions, to protect Sabla Urbo and her people from the horrors of war. In a secluded corner of Sabla Urbo, where hunger was most abundant and poverty oozed from every tattered house, a group of figures dressed in black robes gathered clandestinely in a dark and damp basement. The dim candlelight barely illuminated the space, creating dancing shadows on the stone walls. The air was heavy with the smell of mold and unwashed bodies, an atmosphere that perfectly matched the sinister purpose of the meeting. The leader of the group, an imposing figure with a hood that concealed his face, raised his hands to draw the attention of those present.
Brothers and sisters, servants of our Lord,
he began with a deep, resonant voice.
Our plan is in motion. Soon, Area will be united under one front, and we will gain the power that is rightfully ours. The designs of our God, Tenebrae Mortem, will be fulfilled.
A murmur of approval swept through the group. The members, men and women of different ages and backgrounds, nodded fervently, their eyes shining with unwavering devotion. Each of them had been drawn by the promise of power and change, by the unknown identity of a deity they seemed to worship.
Everyone already knows what they must do.
The leader closed the meeting. The words echoed in the basement, a sinister echo that seemed to penetrate the very stone walls.
May Tenebrae Mortem guide you, brothers,
he said, raising his hands.
May our Lord eradicate our enemies and bring the dawn of a new order.
For the shadows, for a new dawn.
The followers responded in unison, their voices blending into a dark and resolute chorus. With the meeting concluded, the group members dispersed in silence, each returning to their daily lives, hiding their true identities behind a facade of normalcy. The leader watched them go, his thoughts immersed in strategy and anticipation. He knew that the path to power was full of dangers and challenges, but he also knew that they had the faith and protection of their dark god on their side.
You know what you must do, Eric. Begin preparing everything and find out if the breeding will be a problem for our Lord's designs,
said the masked leader to a young man hiding in the shadows of the place.
I will do so, my lord,
Eric affirmed as he silently left the place, his mission shrouded in mystery. As he ascended the steps towards the basement exit, a sense of anticipation grew in his chest. Soon, very soon, Erail would know the new dawn, and those who once despised and underestimated his lord would pay the price.